The Demidov praise just keeps coming and coming out from different sources, saying some things that we kind of haven't even heard before, including some amazing locker room presence notes that really make it clear why he was a Montreal Canadiens draft choice. We're getting into that. Plus, the trade talks keep on picking up, with the Dvorak trade talks coming to seemingly a peak right now. We have Laine trade talks still in the works that we want to get your guys' opinion on. Plus, we had to talk about what one analyst said about Cayden Guhle's contract. He had some fairly harsh words. We're going to be discussing a bunch of stuff like that coming up on this live episode of Habs Digest. Thank you, all 91 of you in here already. Thank you very much for joining us. Apologies for the few minutes delay, but we're here to do it now. And Jesse, are you excited for another weekly Monday stream? It's just so awesome to do this every single week.
Absolutely. So nice to be here with all the great fans that we have. Excited to get into it tonight.
All right, here we go, and I got to take a look in the chat. Look at all the channel members here already. I see Ikram, I see Alex there. Great to see you, as always. As you guys know, a Rocket Richard tier member. And then we got Denis Ranger, Denis always, one of the super fans in here. We also got Chion Fado Desson, who was gifted a channel membership a while back. And we got Mark in here as well, the channel member with the Slapzilla emoji. Just got to highlight our wonderful channel members before we get into the video. So thank you very much for everyone being in here, over 100 people. And I want to start with something that we already kind of know about, guys. It's something about the defense contracts. Now, we've talked a lot about it already, but we haven't talked about it with you guys live. So Jesse, without further ado, let's just get into this. So I just wanted to highlight the current Habs defensive contract situation. Of course, we know Matheson got 2 more years, Savard's expiring, Strubl's an RFA next year, Weidman, he's retired, so he's going to be off the books. But we see Guhle on that huge extension. We'll get into him a bit more in detail later. But we got Xhekaj and Barron. Jesse, of these 3, I know the first 2, like Xhekaj and Barron, are kind of shorter term, so it's hard to say if they're better or whatever, but which one of these kind of got you the most excited when the team signed it? For me, it's actually really, really close between Xhekaj and Guhle. Guhle is my guy. I love that price. I think he can live up to it. But honestly, at the same time, it's like seeing we got Xhekaj the share for 2 more years at 1.3 per, knowing what he's going to be able to bring and likely trying to set him up for a bigger contract down the road, got me so unbelievably hyped.
For me, we needed to sign all these guys, Barron included, right? Because I still want to see what this player has. So just all this body work, I definitely expected it. The Guhle deal, we knew. Xhekaj, we knew we wanted them to be around, right? But just having this done now so we get a better kind of view of this team, like Kent Hughes did it right. That's why I'm happy about all these contracts. Obviously, Xhekaj's I'm a big fan of his game, Guhle as well, but Barron he can still turn it up. There's a couple notches in his game, so I think just amazing contracts. I really get like the philosophy of where Kent is coming from. He's kind of making those investments for the future while still keeping safe at the same time, which, I really respect. Like, Josh, in your opinion, if you're Kent Hughes, are you signing Xhekaj to a 2-year deal, or are you wanting to go a little bit longer with him?
You mean like based on the one they already just signed?
Like, would you have signed him to a 2-year deal, or would you have been looking for more of a long-term deal?
It depends, right? If I'm Kent Hughes, I'm looking to sign him probably longer term, but if I'm signing him longer term, I'm probably looking at a pretty low cap hit, and I just think that's where talks would probably stall, because I love Xhekaj. Teams have been calling for him, right? We've heard supposedly teams offering first-round picks for him. He holds incredible value, and we see why when we watch him play. But at the same time, you can't deny this guy was sent down to the AHL to work on his game this past year, and he's 23, right? So it's like, he's still young. He still has a long career ahead of him, and to have him locked up at a low cap, it would have been amazing. But I think this is one of those best of both worlds things, and I think that's something Kent Hughes has really done well. You guarantee a guy, for Xhekaj in this case, you still give him a decent amount of money, but you give him a chance to prove himself even more. But also on the Habs side, it's less of a risk, because someone like a Xhekaj, who again is like kind of bottom pairing projected, especially with how many good defenders Montreal has for the future. You have a guy like Xhekaj who's probably bottom pairing, if not like maybe second pairing, of course, but there's just so many good players we have that you don't want to go splurging too much money on him. So to me, it's honestly a bit of a win-win.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's it. Like, we love Arber, Xhekaj, but you have to feel getting a little bit of that shorter term deal, that prove it type of deal, is because of the competition, right? Mm-hmm. Like, A very prudent decision by Ken Hughes. We're like, we want him to be around. We want him to be a part of this core. But like you said, going to the AHL, we want him to just improve on some things, obviously with the discipline. But the thing about Arber Xhekaj is he's proven he's able to take those steps. He's able to get better and to really improve. But Ken just wants to see that a little bit more first. Like Guhle, it seemed pretty logical, that obviously, for him to kind of get a little bit of that longer term. For Xhekaj, just because there's a little bit more of those questions, obviously the shorter term deal, right? But I think he's going to end up being a guy that's going to end up cashing out. Like financially speaking, this is going to be better for him. He's going to end up just kind of, he gets the shorter term deal now. He's going to really prove it. Obviously, we know the cap's going up. He's going to end up getting a solid deal, but we're hearing a lot of rumors that, like, for the defensive structure, for looking for the next deals for Barron, for Xhekaj, and many of our other young guys that we have coming up, the idea, at least in theory for right now, I don't know if this completely holds water all the way, is to have it all underneath Guhle. Yeah. Now, I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Josh, because it's like we got some good guys coming up in Reinbacher, in Hudson. When it gets time for their deal with the cap going up, with their talent, I don't know if they're going to be able to keep that structure, but I don't know. I'm curious to get your thoughts on that.
Well, before we get into the thoughts, I was going to read through some channel member comments there, but we got 10 more gifted subs from Denis Rongier. Denis, the Santa Claus of the chat, gifting out memberships every single stream. Unbelievable. Thank you so much, Denis. Unreal stuff. We have 10 new channel members. So Atlantic Audits, Dan L, Joey Belny, De Ringer, Derige, not sure, Dean Leland, I think. I'm trying to read these out. I can't tell if it's a capital I or not. Leland, Dylan Scott, Mark Orr, Rak Chazak, Frank Thibault. Frank, you've been around a while now. You got a channel membership. Liam Smith and Felix Laram. All now new channel members thanks to Denis Rongier. Guys, give Denis some love. I already see it there from Chion. I see it from Atlantic Audits. Oh my gosh, you the man, Denis. Seriously. And we're going to give you another super chat thing coming up. Unreal stuff. Okay. That's unbelievable. Can you guys block those spammers, please? I don't see any spammers. If you see a spammer, report them. But I don't see any in the chat right now. If I do, I will get rid of them. I promise. I want to go back and read some of these here. I just want to go here. Xhekaj's an insanely good signing, but long-term for Guhle is more exciting. I definitely agree. The Sheriff brings something different and a lot of confidence for the regular roster. I also agree. Like, his confidence is arguably the highest on the team, minus maybe like Slap. Alex asking, do you think they'll sign or wind up trading Evans? Not sure he fits in the plans. Evans is my boy. We're not trading Evans. I'm not even going to hear it. Not even discussing it. I'm sorry. We're talking about defensemen here, Alex. Realistically, I say they try and sign him because he's the perfect bottom six center, and he's not going to cost too much. He's amazing for Montreal. He's a UFA, of course, but they'll try. Matheson contract's really good. Absolutely. Denis for MVP. People saying Denis. Oh, yeah. Absolutely amazing. All right. So to answer your question, to get all those guys in under 5.5, I think is going to be nigh impossible. I don't think there's a world where Laine Hudson gets signed for under 5.5 million. Sorry. Let me clarify. I don't think he's going to accept a long-term deal at that cap hit after just like a little bit of time in the NHL. I think for him, it's going to be another one of those situations where if he hasn't already shown insane flashes of brilliance, like we saw from Brock Faber last year, who earned himself an $8 by $8.5 million contract, if Hudson doesn't show insane flashes of brilliance this season, like, I would say they give him a bridge, and they just say, hey, prove it to us, man, earn yourself some money. And in the long term, especially with the cap going up, I don't see a world where that happens, just because, the money's going to go up. But can you imagine if it did? Can you imagine the cap management, the psychology? You're asking for more than Guhle? Get off my team. Maybe some of that's at play.
Well, that's it. That's the whole question, right? The thing about Guhle is that it's more than just his numbers. Obviously he's a great defenseman, but like he brings so much character. He brings so many different things to the game. I heard a wise man once say it's not our abilities that define who we are, but it's our choices. Mm-hmm. Albus Dumbledore. Okay, maybe he was a wizard that said that, but the fact remains the same, is that with Guhle, you got the talent, but then you have that character, right? Like, to actually lead that next crop of D-men, right? Like, he's going to be such a great role model to Hudson, to Mailloux, to Reinbacher. Like, you have to feel like this is a guy they're going to be able to relate to. Like, not only talented, can play both sides of the ice, but like, a good leader. And they're going to have such a good example. They're like, okay, if I just kind of put my head down, put in the work like I have to, like, I'm going to get that deal as well, right? So he's just going to be such a great example. And we can't underrate like enough, like how much like that internal development that you can from kind of teammates, because they're the ones at training working today every day together, right? So the fact to have somebody like Guhle that really kind of mentor some of these young guys along, and we know only 3 years into his career, but like this is the type of guy that he is, where he can really kind of, you know, set the tempo, right? And to what to really expect. And that's just going to help all of our young decor.
I actually saw a nice comment there from Alex saying you might be talking Laine Hutson closer to like keep him under Suzuki level, which I think might make some more sense, especially for what he'll be able to bring, right? And even if you can keep him under that, it'd be amazing. So I see some people saying 6 years at $7 million, 8 years at 9-ish, or 6.57 million for Hutson. I think that's pretty much where it's going. Give him a chance to make his presence felt for sure. So the person who was asking about the spam said, "What is this gifted sub from Denis?" Is that not spam? No, that means Denis has gifted 10 different $4 per month channel memberships, which means that there's 10 new people in the stream who get priority response to comments here and on videos and get access to our members only videos and a bunch more stuff. So it's the most kind thing. So anyway, I wanted to thank you again, Denis, for that. Real good stuff. But Jesse, we're talking about Guhle. We're spending way more time on this topic than I thought we would, but it's interesting and it gets the people going. And I want to bring up this quote. I want to bring up this quote that we saw from Stu Grimson on NHL Network. Now, he said a bunch of things. Overall, he kind of said what we were all thinking. Like, it is a bit of a risk to sign Guhle, but you know, he probably will grow into it. But he said, remember, it's half a year for him, just north of 40 games in a full year this year. Not a huge sample size to bet big on a guy like this. $5.5 million over the course of his entire deal. So I don't want to spend too much time on this, Jesse, because we've already kind of just spent a lot on this. How much inherent risk do you feel? Because this is a gut thing for us fans, right? Like, realistically, you break it down logistically for his performance and what you think he could be. Makes sense. It's a fair risk. I think most people agree it's a fair deal. It's not like a huge steal, but it has potential to be a big steal. When I saw that deal, my first reaction was not big risk. Because again, like, he plays enough games. Like, he has some concussion issues, of course. He had some leg issues, whatever. But when I saw that, I just didn't see a risk because, honestly, you look at what he did last season. Here's what I always come back to. And it's something we've all heard, so forgive me if you've heard this a million times before. But Guhle, playing on his offside, playing literally top 5 most difficult minutes in the NHL by a couple of different websites, still putting up not a ton of points, but decent enough points, solid defensive metrics. Is that not already worth like $5 million?
Yeah, I've seen some analysts on YouTube and otherwise kind of having a problem with Guhle, you know, playing, you know, 70 games. For me, that's totally acceptable, right? I think if you're able to 70 plus in a season, I'm not going to throw any sort of shade at that whatsoever. We're talking about its contract. Like, the fact that it's only kicking in next year definitely helps the finances, the optics of it quite a bit, right? Like, we know this is a guy that's projected to be a number 2 defenseman, and I feel like Kent Hughes, he's got a lot of experience getting contracts right, and it really shows, right? Because some projections are showing that Guhle will have a value of about 6.9 AAV over the course of this deal, right? So it's obviously, yeah, I think it's as time goes on, right? I forget who provided the numbers on that one exactly, right? But as that time goes on, like, absolutely, you feel like this is just going to be a steal where it's just going to keep getting better. Like, I feel Cayden Guhle next year is going to have the best year so far, his best year in the NHL. He's going to have that experience. The contract's going to be out of the way, which, you know, has kind of been out of, you know, been in his mind. When you get that long-term deal, you really, again, like Slav said, just get to focus on the hockey. Like, people like Guhle, people like Slav, they're hockey players, right? They're not people that play hockey. They just like to be in the gym. They like to play. They like to just be able to focus on the game. So now that all this other, you know, background noise is kind of taken care of, they're just ready to go, right? So I feel like with these young guys, and even like Hudson and Mailloux getting time and all that, like, that's going to help take a lot of responsibility off of him. It's going to be a much better decor for the Habs this year coming up, which I think is an underrated factor in terms of how that's going to affect the team next year, which I really think is, even next year, we're going to see Cayden Guhle playing amazing. And already we're going to be thinking this contract is great.
Yeah. And like, you don't even need to go far to see some of his amazing potential, right? We already see him as straight up one of the fastest skaters in the NHL when going at peak speed, which people kind of don't realize. They kind of sleep on that. And go back to that clip. Was it Owen Tippett? It was in that Flyers game that was going down, setting, I think it was one of the fastest skating burst in the NHL all season, and Guhle kept up with him skating backwards, right? There are clips where Guhle is just unbelievably fast. So there's just so much potential left to be unlocked. I'm super excited for it. I'm going to read some chats really quick before we move on to some Dvorak stuff. Atlanta got it saying, how do I get to the members only videos? I think someone said it there. You go to the channel and you can click the members only tab, I believe. Denis saying, no risk at all. Guhle's a future GOAT. My boy, Denis, absolutely. Shion saying, oh yeah, I kind of agree. Yeah, you know what, Flemington, I'll give you a warning. Just chill out. That's all I'll say. We'll move on to the Christian Dvorak stuff, Jesse. And I wanted to get into this here. It's just some of the stuff from yesterday, a lot of it. But I wanted to get the fans' input on this. Because when we're talking about trades, this is one of these guys that just, he holds more value than I think people think he does, right? Just because he fits in the bottom six of so many teams. The only problem is his cap hit, right? And teams fitting that in. And of course, from Ryan Sporer, the hockey writers, this is all, every article we mentioned is linked down below in the description. So again, go give them the credit they deserve. If you haven't checked it out yesterday, I suggest you go do it now. Ryan wrote a great article. There should be greater urgency to move a player like Christian Dvorak, who so clearly doesn't figure into the team's future plans, especially with Joshua Waugh projected to make the roster. But then C. Brown from Dose.ca, linked down below. In any case, I don't really see how trading Dvorak would really help the Habs open up a spot for Waugh. And considering Dvorak probably isn't a player in high demand, you might have to pay to get rid of him. And again, if I just bring up his stats, this is a lot of what we talked about yesterday, but I wanted to get your guys' opinion. Jesse, when we look at Dvorak, like, again, the only problem is the cap hit. If you're Montreal, okay, here's my big question. If you're Montreal and you're looking at who to use your retention spot on, my first reaction when we were speaking yesterday was to say, save it for David Savard. But if there's any team that is under the cap and they can use that accrual to get him, I don't know how many contending teams are going to be under the cap before the season. I don't think it's very many. Maybe they could fit him in, or maybe they could move out a bad contract to Montreal, kind of swap. Don't know. I feel like Savard definitely gives you better opportunities. But in the short term, Savard is still I would argue, a more valuable piece to Montreal throughout this season than Dvorak is. But then again, Dvorak's best buddies with Caufield. He is a great face-off guy. Again, his defense has not really been where we wanted it to be. I just feel like Savard has shown so much for helping the young defenders grow versus what Dvorak has done on offense. And I don't dislike Dvorak. I don't think he's worth his contract, but I don't mind when he's on the ice. I'm definitely never blown away. But the more I think about it, the more I think this actually could be a real possibility of using a retention slot on him to open up more space, to just be done with that contract, as long as you don't have to give up a pick alongside him to get rid of him. Am I crazy for that? I feel like maybe there's a world they could do that instead of Savard.
I would honestly, no offense against Christian Dvorak, but I'm very much for a trade at this point. It's nice to hear, some of the same thoughts that we've echoed on the show being said by journalists, here is that, like, just clearly not a fit on this team right now, right? And we know it's a tight-knit group. We know he's really good friends with the entire team and everything else like that, but I just feel like to kind of take that next step right now, sometimes if you kind of hold on to players that aren't part of the future, well, you're just kind of delaying that future, right? Like, you're going to get there anyway. There's not a huge amount of pressure right now anyway. So I feel like kind of just getting a better overall feel for this team and getting these young guys the ice time that they need. Because for me, like, some of our depth guys, they're good, but they need that ice time, right? Even if they might play different positions, I think, every spot is just so important. So I know we got the smartest fans, in the entire NHL, probably the smartest fans out of any sports, fan base, right? And we're seeing a lot of the comments, like, and very rightfully so and astutely, right? Like, a lot of fans are like, we should wait, right? And I think there's a solid point. Like, probably that is the smarter, the more emotional, visceral sort of reaction. Be like, no, trade him. We want this team to change and start to kind of compete differently. And I guess for me, that's kind of maybe the biggest thing is, again, we're seeing like great comments again from our fans, like saying like maybe one of the things that's missing from Debo though is this playing with that heart, and again, we don't like to, talk negatively about our players because we appreciate that hockey's a tough sport and being able to go there and put on that sweater for the Habs. Obviously you're sacrificing your body, right? But we ask a lot. We want to see like that effort from Dvorak because you feel like that skill is there. And if he would just kind of implicate himself in the game a little bit more, like he could make it happen. He was such a great player, like in the OHL, and everything else. Like we know that skill is there following his career. So for me, I'm just kind of impatient, almost kind of take that next step, and I want that fighters kind of through and through on the lineup. But No, we'll have to see. The right decision is maybe to wait. But for me, honestly, if I'm Kent Hughes, I'm looking to make a deal because I really want to take this next chapter and really start taking ownership of having the players that I kind of selected on this team.
Yeah, and I'm fully on board with that. Like you said, there just is no room for him long term. But again, this is the last year of his contract, so it depends. And I see comments here saying, like, who wants Dvorak, right? Like, I also see a comment from Alex. I just wanted to say, channel members, obviously, we got to answer them. I'm going to have one of the best defensive cores in the league next year. Only going to get better with Reinbacher, absolutely. I see one comment saying Dvorak's better than Evans. I would argue that that's possibly true at this very moment. However, Evans is more valuable to Montreal, I would say, just in terms of contract as well. And after this season, like, Evans has been in that role doing such a phenomenal job. And I do think Dvorak brings some more. However, Evans is much better on the PK than Dvorak. So that's kind of where I see, like, Dvorak might be a more talented player, but I think Evans brings more to the Montreal lineup night in, night out, though he's worse on faceoffs. There's a lot of debate there. That's the thing. Devo will be traded at the deadline. Who wants Dvorak? Yeah, and I saw another comment saying it depends 100 from Alex, 100% on camp. 100% on the training camp is, I think, maybe the best way to look at this, Jesse, because you have so many guys that are going to be fighting for a spot, and you know, you can't give a spot to everyone, whether it's Owen, Beck, Joshua Watt. I saw some people saying Watt doesn't play center. I think we all know Watt doesn't play center. The thing is, like, again, if you move Dvorak, you then open up a spot for, I think Watt's on the team anyway because of RHP being out. You open up a spot for maybe Beck, but if he doesn't make the team, you shift one of Dach or Newhook, whoever's on the wing, to center. So then your centers are Suzuki, Dach, Newhook, Evans. And that inherently opens up one more spot on the wing higher up in the lineup.
Right.
So yeah, you have a chance, right, for someone like a Joshua Watt to play even higher. So I think it's just kind of like, it's a bit of give and take, right? Is it worth moving him at the start of the season? I think you're right, Jesse, in that we want to move on towards a bunch of guys that the Habs have brought in themselves. My biggest thing, though, is I also don't think they're going to rush it. The last thing you want to do is prematurely make a move like that when maybe Watt didn't have a great training camp. He could use a bit of time to ramp back up to that NHL level, and then Owen Beck just isn't quite at that NHL level yet, and then you're running out another lineup that is just less competitive than you would like them to be. And I know it's not about competing right now, but the guys want to, right? So that's kind of where I see, like, as much as it makes sense to move him, I think some of the comments might be right, and I think maybe waiting a bit into the season as we get towards the deadline might be more valuable, because I don't see any world where Dvorak's value goes down from where it is today.
That's the whole point, right? I can really appreciate the whole training camp argument, like, you know, have young players come in, have a really solid plan, you know, camp, and then earn their spot. I think there's already so much internal competition that it's not so much hanging on Dvorak. I don't know if he's really the competition at this point. Again, like, knowing what the clear future is of this team, you know, that being said, all the same, you know, so I definitely get where that's coming from. And I feel like Joshua Watt, I don't know, I just have a lot of confidence in this player. I think that he's going to demand his ice time, right? I think if Kent Hughes, like, you kind of want to be ahead of those things too. I think they've had a fair amount of time of evaluating this player, right? Like, we kind of know what we got in Christian Dvorak so far, right? But of course, Kent, you know, his MO and why we say is most likely in the situation is, like, he's going to allow him to play, like you said, to kind of raise up that value, because obviously every little bit helps, right? Like, you know, that difference between, you know, whether it's a 4th or, you know, a 6th round pick, right? Like, who you can end up getting, all these things matter. So it's important, absolutely, Josh, not to make hasty decisions when it comes to personnel.
100%. I just want to take a minute to think, holy crap, we got almost 400 people in here. I didn't take a look at the amount of people. This is the best stream in a while. So if you're in here, I ask you guys always to do this, but just leave a like on the stream. It takes 1 second, doesn't hurt you. It actually helps you because it helps other Habs fans come into the stream, help find us, sharing this wonderful community with so many now new channel members and stuff, and it helps us a lot too. So if you really like what we're doing, we'd really appreciate if you could just leave a like on the stream. It means more to us than you could even possibly imagine for a 2-second thing. And I wanted to say hi to Doug Saylor, another Rocket Richard tier member, saying Dvorak was to replace Kotkaniemi, but now we are deep in center, so trade him. And I saw another thing saying to trade him when another team's middle 6 or bottom 6 center gets injured. You don't hope for injuries, but of course they can happen. Very right, Simon. So very, very interesting. But hey, Doug, we'll be looking forward. We'll be talking to Doug and Alex on a live video call later this week because of their channel member tier. So if that interests you guys, and hey, you know, there's options for the higher channel member tiers. I wanted to move on to George. George is here too. Jesse, the first live stream in a while for George. Long time supporter. Hi, everyone. I hope you're all having a great night. Great to see you, George. Great to have you in here. Hope you're having a great night too. We're both thrilled to have you here. Alex saying, I realistically think Kent Hughes is willing to lose Devo on waivers if it comes to it. Can Devo even go on waivers? Yeah, anyone can go on waivers. The thing is, like, a lot of the time there's no point to put a guy on waivers because, like we did with Armia last year, it doesn't actually help your cap situation. The only way you would do it is if you really don't see them fitting into your lineup. And I remember, Jesse, last year, we were shocked when Armia went on waivers because we said, oh my gosh, this guy he doesn't have it anymore. Give those minutes to a younger guy. And Armia turned it around after that happened, to be fair. A team could claim Dvorak, but no team's going to claim him because I think a lot of teams just can't afford it. I'm just not quite. I want to move on quickly after this, but I'm not quite to the point where I would want to waive Dvorak and lose him for nothing. Like, maybe if Kent really sees there's not a big market for it, and he really believes that another player would be more valuable in the lineup today, but I think Dvorak's just too good to just waive like that.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to feel like there's a little bit of value there still. Obviously he's had a rough batch, of late, but it's one of those players again. We don't like to mention like all Habs players, like ex-Habs players, but like we've seen a couple players from the Habs go elsewhere and end up having a little bit of success, right? You almost wouldn't be surprised again with Dvorak to be able to do that because he's able to win draws. Again, we know that's so important to have possession of the puck, to be able to be effective in the NHL. He has offensive skills, right? Like he has all the tools to really be successful in the NHL. There's a reason why he's in the show and everything else like that, right? But you got to feel like there's a little bit of value there. But, Kent, he wants to take this team to the next level. So for me, all cards are on the table. Like if you really want to take that next step, that means really kind of, changing gears and doing things a little bit differently than what you've done in the past to kind of have those different results.
100%. So anyway, we'll move on from this stuff now, but it's always really interesting. I think gets people going, thinking about potential trades that are coming up. But Jesse, let's talk about a guy that we all love to talk about, and that's our boy Ivan Demidov. Now I got some quotes here. I got to try and remember which button is which because we got a few things on Demidov. But first things first, there has been so much praise for Demidov coming out recently. I saw a post that I actually didn't have time to prep for this stream. I didn't have time to prep a graphic for it, but I think it was on Reddit earlier. It was on Twitter or something where someone said like Demidov. I forget which scout it was, if it was a team scout or if it was a reporter or something. What was that?
Yeah. Sebastian High.
Oh, yeah. Right. So Sebastian said that, like, Demidov has the best puck handling of any player drafted in the last 5 years, Bedard included, which I thought was crazy. But then we also have, I hope this is the right quote, let's bring it up. Yeah, from Scott Powers at The Athletic, he's a great guy. Everyone loves him. In the locker room, he's a true leader. He's a guy who wants to do everything to get success in hockey. And where have you heard that before, right? Pretty much everyone the Habs are drafting. And he goes on to say how Demidov's work ethic is absolutely insane. We've even seen that so far with SKA, with these workouts. His leg's not even 100%, so he's adjusting. He's in the gym, on the ice, every second of every day. And now that we're heading into his D+1 year with SKA, some people are scared about it, but I wanted to show this graphic as well, and this comes from Habs Eye on the Prize, who had a great article, as always, linked down below, of course. Go give them the credit they deserve. This image was really telling, Jesse. In the last few years, 2023 draft picks, they've been seeing a pretty significant increase in time on ice for 18, 19-year-olds compared to what we've seen in the past. Even we got guys like Nikishin, who was 18, 19 in 2021. Now he's the captain of his team playing a ton of time, right? Kaprizov at age 18 was playing 17 minutes a night. So that precedent to play a lot of minutes in the KHL is absolutely there. And one final thing is from Roman Rottenberg, when he was talking about Michkov, when Michkov was originally leaving to go to HC Sochi, he kind of tried to make it seem like the tone behind this was very much that Michkov was doing this on his own accord. He said, we've invested a lot in Matvei. I personally did a lot to ensure he played for us, that he came to us. I personally did this. I invested a lot of time and effort in developing this player. There's passion for developing their players, Jesse. The precedent is there to play a lot of minutes. And after hearing what he had to say about Demidov as well and how they've had a plan with the Habs, I'm actually more excited than I thought I would be to see Demidov play on what is inevitably going to be a competitive team in the KHL.
Yeah, and we're seeing that the vibes are a little bit different than those kind of surrounding Michkov, right? And we're starting to see a lot of those examples already, right? And you have to feel like, again, going back to that quote on just like better stick handling than Celebrini, than Bedard, better hands, like that is absolutely unreal. When we talk about being deceptive with the puck, doesn't that go so well with this current group of players that we have right now? other deceptive players. Obviously, Nick Suzuki, that's his bread and butter. You don't know whether he's going to shoot or pass. He's that triple threat, right? You got Hudson, who obviously with the head fakes, obviously like Slav, like his playmaking abilities. You see that type of play being able to obviously go so well with this team. And we see as well that he's able, with those quick hands, what it allows you to do is to make plays in tight areas, right? So we're seeing that as all attributes that really carry over so well to the NHL game. Now, that being said, like in terms of ice time and everything else coming up, is like, don't be surprised if we do see Demidov playing at least like a couple games in the VHL when he kind of needs it, if necessary. Now, we know that like there is connections with Nick Bobrov's father, who does work with ESCALATING. So you have to feel like those connections are really going to help, with the ice time. We're saying Demidov definitely, he definitely, I think, is going to earn it on merit. But like, if we're looking at like draft at 5th overall draft picks in their draft plus 1 year, Reinbacher's only 3 out of 10 rather to actually play professional hockey in their draft plus 1 year. So it's not even something that we see all the time, right? And that's big up to Reinbacher. He doesn't always get that credit, right? For like the Swiss League is arguably the second best league in the world. SHL, Swiss League, kind of comparable. Who's second best, compared to the NHL? Like very close, right? So yeah. Demidov again, like we're getting those quotes. Like this guy's somebody that loves to play hockey, loves to be at the rink, like Slav, like Guhle. So we're just seeing all these things of how, like, Josh, like, isn't he the perfect fit for the Montreal Canadiens and what we needed?
I mean, he's just Slav 2.0 by everything I'm seeing, right? They seem to have the same silly mentality, but silly persona, I guess, but serious about hockey mentality. I want to give another very big thank you to Wazo Premier for the super chat. Thank you so much. I see you say, all I can afford is a super chat once in a while. Never feel like you need to give anything to us. Like, seriously, just having people in here watching us every single day is more than a gift, but we seriously really appreciate that. Leave a like on that super chat, guys. Please, seriously, it's unbelievable. And I wanted to get to George's comments as well, Jesse. He said, thanks, Jesse and Josh, for doing much better. That is awesome to hear. I'll be here a lot more now if the live shows were my idea. These were created in large part because of George. And this is my first Monday live stream. So happy to be here with the Slavzilla emoji. Thank you so much, George. And I forgot to say, by the way, to all the new channel members, if you weren't familiar, we do have the fun emojis there that you can send into the chat. We're going to be getting more. We got some Demidov stuff coming. We got some Demidov animations on the way. Some amazing stuff. And Frank Daig saying, yes, I'm totally in the sense too. It's going to be an insane 2 years. It's going to be amazing. And Jesse, that's the thing with Demidov. Like, everything about him, does it feel too good to be true to you?
No, I think it's just what we deserve, right?
Yeah.
I think like that hockey karma as Montreal Canadiens, we're somebody that loves the sport. And it's only normal that we would attract players who have that same love for the game, right? Like this is a storied franchise. This is the best franchise in sport. It's only right that we get the best of the best. And we had to wait for a while, right? It's not like,
too long.
These type of all-stars, right? They grow on trees, but we decided to do it right now. And I just think when you combine all this skill, a lot of great planning with just the natural innate magic that is part of the Montreal Canadiens, there's just something special. And it's because of you guys. It's because of the fans, right? The energy that you guys bring to the Bell Center, that you bring to these lives, these shows, right? Like this is what helps this team. It helps us, people covering, like just encouraging to do this is because we have the most rabid fan base, in all of sports for news for their team, right? It's on no other team where it gets into that sort of religious type of tier where it is with the Montreal Canadiens, right? So I think that we absolutely deserve this. And it's just a sign of more great things to come for the Montreal Canadiens.
We do deserve it. It's time to pat ourselves on the back a little bit here. Ikram Alex saying, sounds like a perfect time for Canada to get another cup. Oh yeah, Montreal is the team that got the last one. It'd just be fitting. I actually saw a post on Reddit a few days ago, people saying, well, which Canadian team is it going to be? Which Canadian team do you want it to be? And a lot of people were saying, like, hey, it kind of just makes sense to be Montreal. Look at where they are now. They were the last team to win one. You know what? Seeing that kind of love was amazing. I think people are coming around on our team, Jesse. There's one more final thing on the meetup that I had, a little quote here. Furthermore, SKA as perennial Gagarin Cup contenders are under no threat to miss the playoffs, like I mentioned earlier. This level of domination means that the team can be very patient with Demidov, whether that means easing him in slowly at the KHL level. This is also from the Habs Eye on the Prize article, which, again, is linked down below. Please go read it. It's some great stuff. Scaling his deployment in accordance to the level of competition or giving him short stints in the VHL or MHL to regain his form and or confidence. The level of flexibility is not something Montreal can offer. And I think that's a big difference there. Because I think they're kind of right. if they were to do that with Demidov in Montreal, it's like, you know, ideally, yeah, I'd be playing a lot in Laval, whatever, but like, not going to send him down to the ECHL, and even in the AHL, he could be really good, but it's a very different league. I think as just purely based on like this way, a linear progression, like to see, you know, jump from the MHL to the KHL with some stints down there, and then to the maybe AHL/NHL, just having him on a more natural progression path. Now, it all depends on how the training is over there, what exactly they're doing to help him out in his process. But Jesse, as I read this, like, again, it feels like the right decision progress-wise, not the right decision for impatient fans like myself that are just getting frustrated every single minute that Demidov's not over here. But there's still a world he can come over before the end of this regular season. So, all in all, I think it just makes a ton of sense. The precedent is there to play him a ton of minutes. It's a competitive team. They have the flexibility to send him to whatever league is best for his development at that moment, whether it's the VHL or, God forbid, the MHL, if he has to go down there to light it up for 4 goals a game for some reason just to get some mojo back. I don't expect that to be an issue. I expect him to be very competitive. But I think it just is starting to make a bit more sense to me, and I'm starting to become less of an impatient fan and more of a, like, let's just make sure this guy is as good as he can be.
And it's so important to get this right because this is our superstar. We need to protect him and make sure he's in the best possible environment. So to see that there's such good relationships between, you know, SKA and Montreal is really just key, right, for his development. Getting this right, again, he's following the path that many other Russian players who become stars in the NHL have done. There's no need to kind of reinvent the wheel. We know for sure there has been problems with younger players sometimes getting their ice time. But again, as we showed with the graph earlier, it's like certain players, if they really show that they deserve it, they can get it. Now, that being said, don't worry, guys. We're going to keep on top of this because this is a fluid situation, right? Like, SKA is looking like it's going to be a stacked team for next year. Ex-Hab Denis Gurianov just joined them as well. It's like, these are a lot of roster spots where, you know, for sure, maybe he didn't have the best NHL career, right? But this is still a good NHL player that's coming over. So for sure, Demidov, he's going to have to battle for all of his time. But, you know, as we pointed to earlier in the pod, is like, this is somebody who lives at the hockey rink. He wakes up in the morning early. He goes to train. He takes a nap basically in the locker room before hitting the ice again, the gym. Like, this guy is there all the time. So again, that Mamba mentality, like Kobe, right? Like, he's always put in that work. So it's hard to kind of catch up, right? And you have to feel like over the course of SKA, he's just going to be getting more and more ice time because he's going to be putting in that time in the gym on the ice, right? He's going to be surpassing those other players on the depth charts for obvious reasons that we all know and love about Ivan Demidov.
Yeah, it's unbelievable stuff. It's, again, it's hard to keep talking about this every single day when, like, all we're seeing is just pictures of him working out. But you can feel that energy. He's smiling all the time. I don't know. Like, you're just making inferences because what else is there to talk about, really? There's a lot of stuff. There's someone asking, isn't Gurianov with Moscow? Not totally sure. I didn't actually catch the Gurianov signing. I do know Tony DeAngelo went to SKA, so make of that what you will. I'm not, anyway. But yeah, still, regardless though, SKA, like, Kuznetsov, Gurianov, if he's there, right? Like, it's just, they have always, and Zaitsev and DeAngelo. So it's like they got some amazing stuff. Yeah, super excited for Demidov. I think it's going to be an unreal season. What if he just lights it up? What if he just goes off for like a point per game in the KHL? That's wishful thinking. I wanted to go through the chats as well. I saw some Ryan Smith. So this might be, so I don't know if this is inside information or not, but he said Montreal interviewed this goalie before the draft. His name is Mike McIver. He plays for the North Bay Battalion in the OHL. He was their backup but became their starter in the playoffs, went 10-5-0. But they went with Vanigs instead. Very interesting little bit of thing there. I don't know where that McIver thing came from, Ryan. I don't know if that's you having some inside knowledge on that, but something interesting to keep an eye on. Did McIver get drafted at all? Well, when was McVanigs, Jesse? Was that the 7th round? Or was it, no, it was, Hanin was the 7th. I don't know, it was like the 5th or 6th. Or still, though, I mean, cool insider info.
Yeah, definitely. No, that's it. Like, you know, we still want a couple of those more goalies in the system, right? So, you know, I think they did right by grabbing a couple more.
I think so too. We got George saying, "Ikram, you must have ESP." Well, be the through though. Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be amazing. George saying, or the truth. Well, be the truth though. Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree. Shion saying Vancouver could have Stanley Cup pretty soon. Ryan says he had an interview 3 days ago. Oh, okay. Interesting. That is interesting. He didn't get drafted, so maybe it's a guy the Habs have an eye on. That is some cool information. I didn't know that. Well, look at that, some insider info coming from our own chat. Really appreciate that, Ryan. I'll have to have a look for that. Really appreciate it. But Jesse, I think Wazo really likes your shirt, by the way. It's groovy. I agree. It's a groovy shirt. Mine is the best, plain as it gets. Last thing, I think before we go, I think the fans all like to talk about Laine as much as a lot of people say they don't like to talk about Laine. I've seen so many messages about Laine in this chat so far here. So I just want to bring it up. I want to bring up the Stu Cowan quote that we had. I think it was this one. I think they have interest in any forward that can score. But like we talked about in the previous podcast, well, him on the Sick podcast, I think there are some red flags with Laine, just like there were some red flags with Pierre-Luc Dubois. Chat! Everyone there in the chat, including Doug and Alex, our two top channel members, as a Hab living in Vancouver, do not want the Canucks to win the Cup. That's why you're such an amazing fan, Doug. I'm going to put a poll.
Yes. Yes or no?
Just yes or... I'm going to say... Patrick Laine, yes or no? Very simple. Intentional typos, by the way, just to make it look funny. So, here's the thing. Keep in mind when you're voting. You know what? No, keep in mind whatever you want. But the thing that I've already said a million times, Jesse, that I feel like the fans have heard me say about 50 times, like, this, when I think about this trade, if a trade doesn't get done, it doesn't get done. If a trade does get done, you can only assume Kent Hughes has had good conversation and has gone through every avenue. Stu Cowan has said this. Pretty much every insider has said this. Like, he's not just going to make a trade for a guy that he truly believes is going to be bad in the locker room, right? So that's why I always lean towards, yeah, I'll take it. Because I know if I wake up and I look at my phone and I see that Patrick Laine has been traded to Montreal, I will have zero negative feelings. I won't be thinking, oh crap, what if he's bad in the locker room? Because I will have enough faith in the front office to have done everything they can to vet him. They even have Pascal Vincent. Kent Hughes was an agent. He can talk to former players that played with Laine. That's kind of the way I think about this, Jesse. And I think a lot of fans, some fans are in on that. Some fans still are just like, no chance. He asked for a trade before, even if he seems fine. I don't believe it, you know?
Yeah, you have to feel like there's a good fit for what we need. I think as I continue to think about it, maybe the one biggest problem would maybe be like the pressure of playing in Montreal. Obviously, you know, he's coming from a difficult situation. He's kind of healing as a person. It would be a very brave move to come to Montreal. You know, that being said, we definitely would want to rally around behind this player as much as possible coming over here, right? But obviously, just that mental part of the game, right? Like, you could definitely wouldn't fault him if he said he just wants to go somewhere where there's a little bit less pressure to kind of ease back into getting into the love of the game, right? You know, there's a couple of solid arguments. I feel like the Anaheim Ducks, though, and the Montreal Canadiens are two of the teams in the league that are doing their rebuild the best, you know? So it's like, there's some strong cases for Montreal as well, right? Like, we're bringing in some pretty solid European type of players, obviously Slafkovsky and Reinbacher, everything else like that, right? So having these young players, I think that, you know, he could potentially be an example to in terms of his hockey play, because obviously it's like, we know off the ice there's been some issues, but on the ice, when he does play, when he's healthy, like, I think if he was to come to Montreal next year, you could put him down 30 goals easy. I'm willing to say that on the pod. If that, you know, if the Habs end up getting Patrick Laine, he's going to score 30 plus goals for the Montreal Canadiens. But we know as Habs, like, we want more than that even. Like with Caufield, we ask, okay, like, we know your goal scorer, but like, we're going to ask Laine to back check and to play that defensive part of the game as well. That's going to be important, right? So you'd have to feel like, is Kent Hughes getting the opportunity to really talk to Patrick Laine? Because I feel like that would be the most important thing. It's great having the connections, great hearing from other people, but what would he get really from speaking with him, even if it's over Zoom, you know, preferably, you know, in person, right? Because I think that would be the best tell if he would be a good fit for this team or not. Now, that being said, there are other good hockey players in the NHL other than Patrick Laine. He isn't the only option, but why he is such a good fit is because don't be surprised if what we have to end up paying is pennies on the dollar, right? That's what makes us, that's why Kent likes doing these type of trades. It's not that far from a Kirby, Dach, you know, type of new hook, except you know that this guy can play. It says, what is my confidence in my club's ability to be able to foster a player that has had some difficulties, to allow him to rebound, put him in a good situation? This is what Kent really needs to be able to sell Laine on. And if he kind of gets that insurance that Laine is willing to meet him halfway, I think you have to be, very, very interested in that, considering it's only a 2-year contract.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it, though, does come down to those kind of caveats, right? Like, how many caveats do we have right there, right? And then we see people in the chat saying, if Montreal can move off of Dvorak or move off of Anderson, absolute no-brainer, right? That's the thing, like, pennies on the dollar. Like, if you're dumping Anderson or Dvorak to Columbus, like, they're going to be like, well, give me a first. Like, I'm not just going to give you Laine, right? There's going to be teams fighting for him. But I think the consensus here, the poll is going to end with an overwhelming yes. At 71% of people would take Laine in 89 out of 89 votes. But if I'm going back through the chat here, I'm seeing a lot of people saying, like, big red flag, yes, no way Jose, says Denis. Alex saying I would take him retained right now to try him out for the rest of his deal. If you can get him retained, you can fit him in under the salary cap. Or if you can, exactly. Or you could, again, somehow dump a Dvorak or Armia or someone to another team or something in sort of a cap dump move to fully stay under the cap without having to use any of Price's LTIR. That would be amazing too. But then as Chion says, kind of what we're saying, only if Hughes decides it's the right decision. And then we say, Kartik saying, I'd rather have Laine over Zegras, and I agree. So does Chion. I completely agree. I think Laine just has so much more potential as a player. I think, again, he's very streaky. I think he fits Montreal's build a bit more. I don't know. Maybe it's actually. We're not going to get into that debate right now. I'm starting to second guess myself, but they're both really good players. Denise saying, really interesting, guys. Thanks a lot to followers. Thank you all, over 400 people in here now. And if you're one of the 400 people that hasn't hit the like button, or if you want to subscribe to our channel, if you like what we do every single day, you never want to miss a stream or a video, hit subscribe down below too. You can even chat here. If you subscribe, that's all you got to do. You can chat in the chat. Thank you very much. George saying, thanks, Denis. Have a great night. Thank you very much, Denis. Have a great night. Alex saying, if Kent buys into it, you can see Laine even signing a bridge deal afterwards. Right. Like, here's the thing. This is, I think, the last thing we're going to talk about. But if they get Laine, Jesse, and I know it's 2 years, I don't see a world where 2-year sample size leads to a bridge deal. I just don't get it. Not at Laine's age, I don't think. Not because Montreal wouldn't want to offer it, because I think that would be a fine move, right? It's a non-committal move, especially if he's solid, right? Like, this kind of thing. But for Laine, if he has even a decent next 2 seasons, at the end of his contract, there's going to be a team that's going to offer him 5-6 years. If he's terrible and he can't stay healthy again, maybe a team will sign him to a 1-2 year deal. If he's even decent, Jesse, if he's putting up 25, 30 goals a season over the next 2 years, there's going to be a team willing to splurge on him until he's 34. Just to lock him up. And if you're Patrick Laine, you take that. Especially with how your career has gone so far. That's my only caveat to that. Like, if Montreal goes for him, you gotta be ready to pay him at the end of this 2-year deal. Because if you don't, another team will.
Well, that's just it, right? And obviously there's a lot to kind of get there to determine that, right? But if he is able to play well, it's going to be a question after that 2 years. Is he part of this Habs core or is he not? Because Kent Hughes is very telling in his contracts, right, in terms of who he views as the core and who he wants to be, but to kind of still prove it, right? And it's a fair question to be brought up with this, and I get the apprehension, right? Because Laine's a good player, but you want to see him stay healthy. You want to see that consistency as well, right, from him. So I kind of totally get where that's coming from. For me, I'm always a little bit worrisome about the long-term deals if it's not a core kind of player like slam dunk. So I think there's a lot to be said about that, absolutely a lot of truth to that. And I think you're getting where, like, Patrick Laine, where he would be coming from. And I think quite understandably so, a very good player in the NHL. Obviously they want to get that security. They know their value and everything else. But that being said, you'd have to feel like there'd be a lot of goodwill built up with the Habs, with Patrick Laine at that point, right, where they'd be able to kind of work together. We know Kent Hughes is that he's an absolute whiz when he comes to this thing, right, of really selecting and creating the type of group that he wants. Cayden Guhle said something very interesting recently. He says, I feel it around this team. I feel something special just around this club. And just hearing Cayden Guhle say that, just makes you want to just keep what we have and treat it, as something very that you really need to take care of, right? Because you got a special thing in that room right now, and that's what you gotta balance with Patrick Laine. It's like, do we feel like this would be beneficial in our locker room? Is this going to jeopardize us, or is the risk just too good to pass up the opportunity?
Yeah, and I also saw Alex make a good point. Like, Because if he does gel with the locker room, which I don't think is impossible, because look at how welcoming this Habs locker room is. Look how great the coaching staff has been. Like, there's a world where it just works here better than anywhere else. Maybe that's wishful thinking, but if he does really buy in, maybe he'd want to win in Montreal, and you'd be willing to take maybe a bargain deal, or you'd be okay. Now, I think it's the years that's maybe like he's gonna want a lot more years. And at some point, no matter how much you like being in a spot, if the one offer is 2 years, 10 million per year, and the other offer is 6 years at 9 million per year, and you have an injury history, it's in a player's best interest, and they always got to look out for themselves. That's a great point, Alex. I mean, you're very right. It's very possible that happens. And I wanted to say a big thank you, giant thank you to Denis Rongier for the $10 super chat saying good night, everybody. Well, Denis, always one of the most generous people on these streams. So thankful to have you here. For the 10 gifted subs to 10 new people who can now chat as channel members, send the emojis, see the channel member videos, all that stuff. It's amazing stuff. Alex, answer your question. Line is 26 years old, as baby responded to you with. Very, very true. So I think that'll do it, Jesse. Any final thoughts before we end up? This was a fun stream. I mean, like, not a ton of news flowing, but there's always some great conversations to be had amongst ourselves and the fans. I mean, it's so fun to talk about this team under any circumstance.
So much fun. We're smiling. Can't you tell that we're having a ball doing this with all of you guys, right? Every time we're going live, right? It's hard to keep the smile off our face because, obviously there's a lot to be excited about with this team, and we love chatting about it with all of you.
It's been absolutely amazing. Well, if you guys enjoyed, leave a like, first of all, on your way out, comment, subscribe to the channel, because we're on a road to 15,000, and there's 372 people still left in here. And there's definitely at least, well, according to our metrics, over 150 of you haven't hit subscribe. So if you want to help us on that road to 15,000, we'd really appreciate it. I want to say thank you to Denise saying best show in town. George saying thank you for a great show tonight, everyone. It's a great time. You've all got me thinking. I love thinking about our Habs. So do we, George. Have a great night. Shion, thanks for the stream. Thank you to everyone, not just them. Ryan giving us the inside information. I saw the rest of your chats as well. I'll have a look at this McIver stuff after as well. Saying it's 8-9 in the regular season, 10-5 total in the playoffs. Pretty good stuff. So thank you very much, everyone, for watching. I'm Josh Gosse, for my co-host, Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.